In today's video, I have another notebook to take a look at. This is the Nebula notebook from Colorverse. Let's take a look. Okay, so as I said in the intro, this is the Nebula Casual Note dot grid notebook, and this is actually put out by Colorverse. Now, this is going to be the tester notebook at Butler Stationery. Last time I was there, he happened to be getting ready to put one out and offered to let me do the opening and whatnot for a video. So I definitely took him up on that. And then once I'm done, next time I go to the shop, this will become the new tester notebook. So you'll be able to see this on his testing station. So let's get the plastic off here. And the label and whatnot is on the plastic. So once you take it off, it's got a couple little stars. And then on the back, just Nebula Casual Note. This is a 90-gram paper, ink-proof white, and these pages are detachable. So each one has perforations, so you can tear them off, if you have that use case or that need for a testing station in a store. Not necessarily something that you would need unless you're writing down and taking it with you, so you have reference if you're planning on coming back or wanting to try an ink again. So it's a standard A5 size, and it is a dot grid, as I mentioned. It is ring bound, and this is also fits my preference well. It's a very light dot grid. It's not a heavy dot, so that once you write on it, it should show. The dots will kind of blend into the background instead of being as prominent. And that's a personal preference thing. I'm sure not everybody has that, likes it that way, but that's how I prefer to have my dot grid papers. So what I'm going to do is write down, kind of like I've done in some of the other stationery review videos, using some of the similar pens, just the name of the pen, the name of the ink, and just kind of showing across a couple of brands. It looks like today I have some Iroful, some BMW, some Diamine, and then some Teranishi Guitar Gentle Green. So let me get that written down, and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we have the writing done from a couple different pens and ink combinations. We've got the Diplomat Viper, which has the Diamine Writer's Blood in it, the Asvine J16, which has the Iroshizuku Cyan Gyo, Lamy 2000 Stainless that has a Iroshizuku Shenkai, the pens by Pasquale Merlin, which has the Mont Blanc for BMW, and then the Opus 88 Omar that has the Teranishi Guitar Gentle Green in it. And I just inked that one up, and this ink is known for going down darker and then kind of drying into a green. So I'm also going to do a live writing sample here in a moment to kind of show how that works and see if that really comes through on this paper. So let me go and get the pens moved aside here. So let me bring this up close. So you can see that it's showing some color variation on the inks. The Cyan Gyo, it tends, when it dries, to has a little bit of a green sheen that will come over it. Shenkai doesn't really have much. It's kind of a navy, kind of a flatter ink normally for me. That's really showing the color on the Mont Blanc for BMW well. And then the Teranishi ink, it's not doing the full conversion. It changed a little bit. And since I just inked this up, I did my best to get all of the water out of the feed from cleaning it from what it had in there before. And there might still be a little bit because this is going very different than the sample. So I'll probably go on and just do a little bit of a live swatch of that one on here so we can see how the paper handles an actual swatch as well. But I like the feeling of the paper. It's not a coated paper, so it's a little bit of a rough texture when you're writing on it. So you can kind of hear that scratch. So definitely not a smooth paper. In terms of show through, even with those coloring, you don't really see anything coming through on the back side. So that's nice. You could very easily use both sides of the paper for this notebook. So let me go and grab, see if I have my swatching tool here, and I do not. So let me grab that and I'll be right back. Okay, so here we have the bottle of the Teranishi, the Gentle Green. And what I'm going to do is do a swatch on this paper. And if you've seen any of the recent live streams I've done, I'm using one of these glass dipping rods, and this was given to me by Olive Octopus Ink, and she found it as a great way to do swatches because you can easily clean them off, and it doesn't absorb in any of the ink like a cotton swab would do, so it's a nice way to test. Just dipping the ink here, And then, and you can definitely see, I think my theory is correct, that there's still some water in the feed of my Opus 88. So hopefully that will work its way out as I'm using that. Because even with the extra fine nib, that's going on in a very different color. So let's let that kind of dry here. Now this Teranishi is known for, as it dries, it should switch to more of a green from the teal as it goes down. And just to kind of show, here's my testing card on the coloring card of how that ended up. So this will show if that paper has the same consistency where it will, change, allow it to change. Some papers kind of lock the ink in as it first goes down and don't give it a full chance to do the color conversion. And while that's drying, flipping over, still no show through on an actual swatch. So this 90-gram paper does seem to work well if you wanted to use this as a swatch book. This looks like it would have good potential. So you can see, and let me move this up closer here, it's starting to get some of that color shift. So it does look like this is going to allow for the color to do its evolution as it dries. Now, will it get to the same level of kind of reddish oversheen that it does on the coloring? We'll just have to give it a little bit more time to see. But, I think this would be great paper for swatching, for showing good, true ink colors. This is very promising because it's starting to naturally turn into the green. Because this ink, as it dries, it goes from on as a deep teal, then kind of works its way to a green, and then that red sheen really kind of comes around at the very end. So this is definitely allowing that ink transformation to take place. So that's very promising for this paper. But overall, this is and let's see if it's dry yet. And it's mostly dry. You can see there's a little bit of ink coming in. That's from a puddle. So this is drying pretty quick, and I'll just do let me grab the Diplomat just to kind of show if we're doing, an immediate dry, and then do a 5-second. And then the 15, like we've done in some of the other videos. So you can see there, after 15 seconds, it's pretty much almost fully dry. So that's a good sign too. It's kind of standard for paper, but yeah, I'm definitely pleased with how this Teranishi is getting its chance to work through its colors. Now, it's not going as much of the full red sheen as it did on the coloring, but I almost kind of like that. So you can see the variation. It's got some of the red sheen where there was more ink from the swatch around this circle here. It's got the green sheen, and then still a little bit of the bluish as it goes on some of the corners where it's more of a single layer. So definitely very pleased with this notebook. I'm glad, very grateful that Jonathan at Butler Stationery let me take his new testing book, to do a video on. This is one I could see actually picking up. I like this. It's very similar to the Iroful. And actually, let me grab my Iroful and I'll show a side-by-side of how the Iroful and this do for an ink swatch. Okay, so here we have the Iroful and then the Nebula. I'm just going to set that over there so we can get a good side-by-side. Let me grab the swatching stick here. Make sure it's nice and dry. And then we're just going to do, I'm not going to do all the writing samples. I have the video for that. I'll put a link to as a little pop-up card here so you can see that if you haven't seen it yet. But all I'm going to do is just do a similar swatch of this ink to kind of show, because the Iroful was showing colors really well. So this will give a good, relative comparison of how both of these papers are handling the ink ever since the original Tomoe and some of the recent Tomoe variations. They kind of lost some of the known color fastness. It seems like there's a lot of people looking for what's going to be their new go-to swatching paper. So as you can see, this definitely goes on in that bluish tint. And then I'm just going to set my swatch card up here. So we've got the how in theory it should end up, see if it ends up more like the coloring card, more like the Nebula, or how the Iroful handles it. Because I don't remember if Iroful is one of the ones that does lock the color in before it gets a chance to fully change. So in the search for notebooks that show the color really well, some of it's personal preference of how you want the ink to show. Everybody has their own matrix of how they decide what they like and what they don't like in terms of paper and inks and how inks appear and how they use them. But it is good to have a good relative comparison so that going in of how different inks will perform if you're getting a new ink and you want it to show a variation for something like this where it's going to go on in one color and then end up drying in a different color. It's good to know going in with different ink brands as you've seen reviews or people talking about them, or get a sample at a pen club or a pen show or something like that. So far it seems like the Iroful is almost locking the ink in at that initial blue-green color. It's not really transforming in the same way that it was able to on this Nebula paper. Where there's more content. Let me see if I can hold both of these up to get. There we go. So you can see it's got a little touch of red where there's the darker blotches of ink on this swatch, but it's not really getting the chance to do that blue to green conversion like it is on this Nebula paper. So I think if I was making a decision and I wanted to see the true color change of the ink, this Nebula would be my preference over the Iroful. The Iroful's nice. It shows a nice vibrant color, but if you have an ink that it's going to go through a progression and it's going to dry differently, then the Iroful is going to prevent that from happening, it looks like. So just something to be aware of if you're looking, if you wanted to see how these two compare side by side. That's something you can take away to know that while Iroful is going to show color really well, it's not going to let the color go through its full drying cycle if it is known to change colors as it dries. So overall, very pleased with this Nebula notebook, and I think I'll probably end up picking one of these up, as I said, because that is good to see a paper that allows for the color to change. So that's the Nebula notebook by Colorverse. Okay, so that's the Nebula notebook by Colorverse. Have you used this? Is this a paper you've tried? What are your thoughts on the comparison of seeing this next to the Iroful and how they are in terms of showing color and color relief and color transition as the ink dries? Drop a comment below and let me know. It'd be interesting to see if other people are having that same kind of experience, if Iroful is locking the color in as it goes down and not letting it have the chance to make a change as it dries, or is that just something with that particular one ink that's showing that? So be sure and leave a comment. Let me know your experiences so that we can see if this is a one of, or if this is something that we can kind of take away as a known property of the paper. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing so you can see new videos as they're released, and thanks for watching.